during the Tuesday night service, I believe it was. I don't remember Monday night, Tuesday night. Right in the middle of the preaching, there was a thought that came to me, and I believe it was from God. It was God trying to show me something and wanted me to study on something. I wrote it down, put it in my Bible, looked at it a couple of times, and said, you know, Chris ain't said nothing about teaching. Ain't nobody said nothing about teaching. It ain't that big a deal, you know. So this past week, Tuesday, Wednesday night, I don't remember what it was, I finally pulled it out of my Bible and actually start studying on it, you know. And got a few things, kind of just wrote it off, and I'll study on that again a little bit later. And like I say, about 8:30, 8:45 last night, my phone rings, and Chris calls and says he needs me to teach this morning. Well, of course, I accuse him of lying, because I don't know when to believe him or not. I was like, you playing, you ain't going to need me to teach. He said, no, I really need you to teach him more. So God showed me real quick right then that this is why He'd give it to me for this morning, and I had not done my part studying. And it kind of goes right along with what I want to try to stand here and talk about this morning. You know, the Bible tells us to be instant in season and out of season. He caught me at a time I was not ready. And He's proven to me right now why we always need to be ready. Plain and simple. That's been my lesson for this week. Hopefully, y'all can get something out of what He's given me, because it was put together relatively quickly. I believe it is what God wants me to stand here and talk about this morning. But it was put together about 11:30 last night after some very heartfelt prayer, because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So the thought I had a discussion with one of my good friends a while back. He was talking about how, as Christians, how we all struggle each and every day, you know, and how at some point or another, each and every one of us fall short, or the devil tempts us into doing something we don't really want to do, but we do it anyway, and how weak we can be and how we struggle. That was what the whole discussion was about. And his comment was, and it's his opinion, his comment was that, you know, the devil's had over 2,000 years to perfect his deceiving ways. You know, he's had over 2,000 years to figure out how to get in our minds and how to confuse us. Well, God showed me that the devil's the same now that he's always been. If you want to, I ain't going to have just a couple of verses, but the first verse I want to read is in the book of John, chapter 8. Excuse me. And I hope this will be encouraging to people. It's not, I don't want to stand here and sound like I'm beating anybody down. I believe this was to help encourage me and others. And I hope somebody in here is encouraged by this. But in John chapter 8, verse 44, the Bible says, Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So this tells me the devil's always been a liar, always will be a liar, and he's going to do whatever he can and use whatever he can against us to confuse us, to make us doubt, to tempt us into sin, anything and everything we can think of that's against God. The devil's going to try to use that against us, some way, form, or fashion. I've got a very short list, I guess you could say, of things that I believe God showed me, and each and every one of us in here have heard before. And this list is in no certain order. It's just things that God has pointed out to me that we've all heard before. But I believe all of them combined together gives us our strength to live for God each and every day. I believe without this few things I wrote down here, we are going to struggle. We are going to sin. We are going to fall short. We all are going to question things. Come in at the end of the day and say, God, why? Why has it been such a hard day? Why has the devil been on my back so bad today? And I believe it all comes down to not doing these few things I've got here listed out. Like I say, these are no certain order. Number one is prayer. I think we need to be in a daily, multiple time conversation with God each and every day in our lives. Without skipping one day, we need to be thanking God for the blessings He's given us, the ones we know about and the ones we don't know about. I received an email the other day, and I read it to Lori. I won't read it now because it'll probably take me 30 minutes to pull it up on my phone. But, and that's what it was talking about. Somebody in prayer, and they was questioning God why all this happened to them. They was late for work and this, that, and the other. And God goes to explaining to them that He made them late for work because they were a drunk driver on their path to work, and they'd been hit head on and killed by them. And it was just multiple things like that. You had the reader, the prayer, myself or someone in this room, whining and complaining about why so many things that went wrong praying to God that day. And then you have God explaining each and every one of them. And the one that really jumped out at me, excuse me, he'd overslept in his email. He was praying and said, God, why'd you make me late for work? I overslept, my alarm didn't go off. And God goes to explaining to him, the death angel was standing at your bed, and it was there to take you out of this world, and I didn't think it was your time, so I let you sleep through that. He said, I sent one of my angels to battle. And he said, I let you sleep through that because you didn't need to deal with it. We don't know the things that God does for us in a day that we need to be thankful for. That's what I mean when I say we need to be thankful for the blessings we know of and the blessings we don't. Because there's multiple things that happen in a day's time that we have no clue, and it would probably scare us to death if we did know everything that God's protected us from today. In 1 Thessalonians 5, chapter 5, verse 17, it says, pray without ceasing. I don't think it gets any clearer than that. We need to be in prayer consciously and unconsciously, continuously. Every time it pops in my mind, just thank God for all He's done for us. I think that in itself will strengthen us to a point to where we can defend ourselves against the devil, because he's always there. He's always going to be trying to confuse us and trying to push us to the side and trying to get us out of God's will. That's the first thing I believe that's vitally important as Christians in being able to defend ourselves against the devil. The second thing I believe is studying His Word. Reading His Bible daily, reading the Word of God, the living Word of God. Just like I said myself last night, I've read my Bible, but to sit down and study it like I should have with this lesson, I have not done it. And God called me out on it last night when Chris called the house and said, I need to teach more. The first thing that popped in my mind is a little thought that said, see, if you studied that like I give you the opportunity over the last 3 weeks, you wouldn't be so nervous right now. God had laid the path out through His Word, and I didn't take it. And it's my own fault. It's nothing God done. It's nothing anybody else done. I should have listened to Him a month ago, and things would be a whole lot easier. But that's how we do. If we just pick His Word up, read it, study it, apply it to our hearts, apply it to our lives, each and every day, our struggles would be a whole lot less than what they are now. And it's proven itself over and over again. If you can ask anybody in this room that has studied their Bible and faced hardship, how many times a verse will come to your head? How many times God will show you something you've read? And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to you've seen it on paper, the living Word of God, and then God brings it back to your memory in the time of need, how it comforts you, and how God's promises bring us through things. But like I say, it all comes down to putting everything else in our lives aside and taking 30 minutes to an hour, whatever time you want to read and study your word. It's like Ralph said a while ago, we were talking about the word hypocrite. I'm being a hypocrite standing there talking about that this morning because I don't do it like I should. But I'm teaching it myself this morning too. God has showed me this stuff and wanted me to relay it to someone else. Y'all just happen to be the lucky ones that get it relayed to. So. But the next thing on the list was Danny kind of hit on this morning, and for the ones that will be in the second service, I'm sure you'll hear it too. Attending church faithfully. You know, not skipping around. Being here every opportunity you get. It's just like when we read the word, we're being fed spiritually. But you know, we also have to be fed through God's called men, preachers. That is the whole reason for preachers, is to feed the Christians and lead lost souls to Christ. Without that, our spiritual body grows weak, which in turn, as it grows weaker and weaker, we're more apt to be attacked by the devil, more apt to fail God, more apt to fall short of where he wants us to be in our daily walk with him. So, you know, if we come to church once a month, that's just not going to cut it. I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, we're not being fed. As Christians, you know, a lost soul can come ever how often they want to until they accept Christ. It's not doing them one bit of good in their walk with God, because they have no walk with God. But as Christians, once a month's not going to cut it, because we're not being fed the way we should be fed, and we're going to be living a life that's a lie. I mean, we're going to be out here trying to be a Christian, but you don't feel like you need to go to church and serve your God. You know, it's just, it don't make sense to me. And that's what I'm trying to bring across. As Christians, we should have a desire to be at church. We should have a desire to be serving God. We should have a desire to be here to be fed. Ralph can vouch for it too. I mean, I like to eat. He likes to eat. So as Christians, we should want to eat and feed on God's word and his preaching and the things he has in store for us, which in turn goes back to what I'm talking about, gives us more strength. Along with the prayer and along with the study and along with church, it keeps us fed and it keeps us growing and it keeps us close to God to where we can resist the temptations and the lies and whatever the devil has for us. The fourth thing, fellowship with other Christians. I meant to hit on this earlier and mention it again. I don't know, my understanding, what is it, the 30th? We're having a Sunday school outing, and I think we're doing it at the cottage on the other side of the cemetery. Please, everybody come. I mean, just get to know each other. Fellowship with other Christians is one of the greatest things I can experience. You know, getting to sit down with my fellow Christians and talk and discuss God and life and what he's done for you and how he's helped you and what he's doing for our church and our Sunday school class. It encourages my heart anyway. It may not anybody else's, but it does mine. It gets me excited. It makes me look forward to the next time we come to church and get to see each other again. And you know, and it's not only something like that, but there's so many different ways in this church here to be able to fellowship with each other. Men's ministry, women's conferences, Bible classes, and we have these classes that come together and learn God's word and get to know each other at the same time. Like I say, there's things like 5,000 different things that's going on here each and every week. So there's no real reason each and every person can't be in contact with other Christians and have that fellowship. Because, like I say, I think it's as vitally as important as anything. Like me and Ralph was talking just a minute ago about the two services in the morning. There's some sense of loss of fellowship there between the two, you know, and that can be a dangerous thing when when you become out of fellowship with each other, it can become a very dangerous thing. And it's not that we mean for it to happen, it's just the circumstances right now, that's the way it is. But it all goes back to combining all these together, the fellowship with the studying, with the prayer, with attending church. Each and every one of them combined together is what's going to make it for a strong Christian. In Philippians, if you will, flip to Philippians, it's a very, very familiar verse. Most people probably know it by heart. But you know, it's the truth because it's of the Bible, and it's this one simple sentence. Chapter 4, verse 13. And it's, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. How do we get our strength through Christ? Is he going to just strengthen us when we just sit around and just wait on it? You know, okay, God, here I am. I need you to strengthen me today. You know, it don't work that way. But we got to be seeking God. We got to be prayerfully seeking God, studying His Word, in fellowship with God and each other, before He's going to truly strengthen us to handle the things that come along in our lives. I struggle. Like I said, I know there's other people that do. I feel like I can't reiterate enough the importance of these things I've mentioned. I know this is going to be a very short lesson. I don't apologize because I feel like God showed me. I hope and pray someone besides myself can take this and use it, because it obviously God was showing me, because I got what I needed to out of it. He proved that to me last night. But anyway, just take these things to heart. You know, try to remember to pray and study each and every day. When you get the opportunity to be at church, be at church. When you got the opportunity to be involved in some of church, don't back down from it. Don't run scared from it. It's amazing what God can do to you when you just say yes, and what He can do for you. Just take these things, and I hope everybody got a blessing this morning. And if not, sorry, I ain't done what I feel like I need to do. You blame Chris, he's one that called me last night. So.
He ain't here either, we can blame it on him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like I say, I know it was thrown together, and that's just all there is to it. It was thrown together as prayerfully as I could last night, and I feel that God showed me these few things, and I hope someone got something out of it. Anybody have any comments, remarks, questions? Feel free.
Jason, when you started the lesson, you was talking about being tempted. You know, I always come back to 1 Corinthians 10:13. You know, it says, "No temptation is overtaken us; it's not common to man." We have to remember that we are never tempted. That, you know, somebody else hasn't already faced that,
Right.
and that He will never let us be tempted beyond our ability, and that He will provide the way of escape. But we forget to seek Him. And when that happens, you know, I fail it all the time. I always think, you know, when I'm asking for forgiveness, you know, why didn't I turn to Him? You know, why didn't I ask for help? You know, if you just stop, because, you know, when you sin, we have to willfully make that decision. You know, and, you know, so it's so simple, but so easy to forget too. But, you know, you just have to draw from Him.
Well, it's like you just said, you know, there's no temptation that someone more likely in the past has dealt with that temptation, and that's where I was coming at from with the fellowship with other Christians. I don't know at the times that I've had the opportunity to sit down with a fellow Christian and go to discussing stuff I've had to deal with, and they come out and say, you know, I've dealt with that before, and this is how I handle it, and this is what God done for me. To me, that's encouraging. You know, it's not making it okay that you're dealing with something like that, but it's knowing that someone else has been there and can encourage you and help you through it. You know, that's where that fellowship comes in. You don't have that if you don't sit down and fellowship with your fellow Christians, you know, whether it be in here or church-wide or whatever it is. So, Anyone else got anything they want to say?
Well, to strengthen your case about church fellowship and staying faithful to church, you know, when we leave here and we go out in this world, there's a lot of depressing things. This world will bring you down. You know, I remember Don Ball used to say all the time, you run with the dogs, sooner or later you're going to catch fleas. And I can just, you know, you can just imagine if you don't come to church, you don't study His Word, and you're out there in the world, not necessarily partaking of the world, but just out there doing your job Monday through Friday. You never come to church, sooner or later, every week it's going to just bring you down, bring you down, bring you down. I draw strength from coming to church. I look forward to every time I come to church because I draw strength from everybody here. You know, there's strength in numbers. You know, I draw strength from the church fellowship. I mean, it renews me, it strengthens me, and it energizes me, and prepares me for the next week, for whatever may come and what may happen, you know. I mean, church is definitely valuable, and it's something that, you know, staying faithful is something that does not need to be taken lightly.
Absolutely. It needs to be taken serious. It's not a game. You know, hey, I'll go to church just to satisfy my mom because she's on my hind end to get to church. Church is a very serious thing. Our relationship with God is even more serious. Without that relationship, you know, you're destined for hell. And that's what this is all about. Like you were saying, how church strengthens you. You know, prayer strengthens me. You know, today's Father's Day. Okay, I haven't talked to my dad in, say, a year, and all of a sudden I need something. So I just picked the phone up and I called him and said, "Hey, you know what? I ain't talked to you in a year, but I need $200." He gonna tell me no. To me, it works the same way with God. I mean, you go 2 or 3 months and you ain't prayed a bit, and all of a sudden you're in a bind and you need God to help you out of something. Our God, if you're a Christian, more likely our God's going to help you. That's how good a God He is. But the thing about it is, would you blame Him if He didn't? I mean, you went 2 or 3 months and spoke to Him, and all of a sudden you want something, and I wouldn't blame Him a bit if He said, "No, not this time. You have to learn how to talk to me a little bit more often before I'm going to help you out." But that's not our God. You know, but that's what prayer does. It keeps that relationship so close that you know without a shadow of a doubt, if it's His will, then He's going to do it, you know. Anyone else? If not, I'll shut up. Thank y'all for listening.